Hello everyone, a video for tonight's homework, and I sent it home to get you ready for the end of module assessment that we'll be having on Wednesday. With the end of module assessment, a large percentage of the questions are going to be word problems. So tonight's homework is actually more of a review to help students prepare for the test. I wanted to share not the solutions to homework, but at least if they are stuck, they can watch this video, pause it in between each of the questions once they have the drawing part of the read, draw, write strategy, and hopefully they can use that to solve and show their work. So we'll go through one at a time. Unfortunately, a lot of them have to do with honey and baking. It's very interesting. So we have a baker buys a 5-pound bag of sugar. She uses 1 2/3 pounds to make some muffins, and then uses 2 3/4 pounds to make a cake. How much sugar does she have left? We're trying to find how much is left. Students should know when they see something is left that we're taking away from a whole. So our drawing in this case should be a rectangle. We have a whole amount, which is 5 pounds. The baker uses 1 2/3 pounds, so that part's gone. And then they bake some more and use 2 3/4 pounds. And then the question is, how much is left? How much is left should be over here. So now your students should be able to look at this picture and figure out their next step. Students can also do some of it mentally, but remember, if we're finding a common denominator, which it looks like we have different fractions, we can always, off to the side, write our T-chart that helps us find out what our common denominator is going to be. Now students, remember, if we're changing a fraction, we can set it up, and each fraction needs its own separate setup. So let's say here it's 1 2/3. Remember, whatever you do to the denominator, you're going to do to the numerator. So we can find that fraction in common. Then we also need to set up for the second fraction and find out how that one is. Again, what we do to the denominator, we do to the numerator. Okay. If you need to pause and solve, please do. Here we have a boxer needs to lose 3.5 kilograms in a month to be able to compete as a flyweight. In 3 weeks, he lowers his weight from 55 5/10 kilograms to 53 8/10 kilograms. How many kilograms must the boxer lose in the final week to be able to compete as a flyweight? Here, students should say this out loud to know what we have. We have 55 5/10 kilograms, and then the boxer has gone down to 53 8/10 kilograms. They should be able to figure that out. Now, what we are looking for is the boxer needs to lose 3.5 kilograms. So he wants to lose 3.5 kilograms. So finding out, we need to find out first, how much has he already lost? And then our second question is, how much more does he have to lose? So to find out this answer, we're going to have to find out this one first, and then we'll find out this second. So if they're drawing, he started out at 55 5/10, but he lost some amount to get to 53 8/10. And once we find that amount, we should be able to use that number with the 3.5 to find out how much more he has to lose. Again, pause and solve as needed. Question 3. A construction company builds a new rail line from town A to town B. They complete 1 1/4 miles in their first week of work and 1 2/3 miles in the second week. If they still have 25 3/4 miles left to build, what is the distance from town A to town B? Oh, this one's interesting. So, we know that we have this railroad, and it's starting in town A and ending in town B. Do we know how far that distance is? No. We do know that they already completed 1 1/4 miles. Then they kept working and completed 1 2/3. But if all of this is the amount they have left over, 25 3/4, what is my distance? Sorry about smudging that. And again, we can use our T-chart. We've actually already found our T-chart for 3s, 1/3, and 4ths. They can reuse that. Again, pause as necessary. Question 4. A catering company needs 8 7/75 pounds of shrimp for a small party. Okay, that seems important. They buy 3 2/3 pounds of jumbo shrimp, 2 5/8 pounds of medium-sized shrimp, and then they're buying some mini shrimp. So how many pounds of mini shrimp do they buy? Okay, so we have 3 different types of shrimp, but they're using the total amount of shrimp for this party. So if it's a total, that tells me I'm drawing one long rectangle. And how much did they need? 8 7/75. Now for my friends that were paying attention, 7/5 is equivalent to a smaller fraction, and that may come in handy. Remember, I said when we have hundreds, we can also look at it as a dollar. So maybe we look at this amount as a dollar and then possibly quarters, and that can help us simplify this fraction. But what they did tell us is that they bought jumbo shrimp, 3 2/3 pounds, They bought medium-sized shrimp, 2 5/8 pounds, and then over here we have the mini shrimp, which apparently I gave a lot of space to. But that's what we're trying to find. How many pounds of mini shrimp? Okay, in this case, I'm going to go ahead and do the T-chart for 3 and 8. There may be a different fraction you're using here if you did some simplification to make it a lot easier, because hundreds are a little more difficult to use as a common denominator. Because 8 and 100, I want to say it's a very large number. So let's simplify this fraction first so we can find out what else we need on our T-chart. But I do know 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21. I may have to go the full distance to 24, which would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times 3. 8, 16, 24. That's going to be my first common denominator. So let's simplify and see if this number will work here also. Okay, question number 5. Oh, Mark's going on a road trip. He breaks up a 9-hour drive into 3 segments. He drives 2.5 hours before stopping for lunch. After driving some more, he stops for gas. If the second segment of his drive was 1 2/3 hours longer than the first segment, how long did he drive after stopping for gas? Well, this one is very, very interesting. So he's going to have 3 segments. So he's going to start and he's going to drive for 2.5 hours. After driving some more, he stops for gas. So he's driving a second segment. If the second segment of his drive was 1 2/3 hours longer than the first segment, so this is segment 1. Segment 2 says that he drove this far, which would again be the 2.5 hours, but then he also drove 1 2/3 hours longer. How long did he drive after stopping for gas? So this is the segment where he stopped and bought gas. And they want to know after that segment. So here we have these. Let me see. I don't know how long this one should be, but and we know that all 3 add up to 9 hours. So we could set it up with these 3 where we know this one and we know this one, but we just don't know this third segment. We could also say that it's 2.5 plus the same distance for the first drive plus 1 2/3 hours plus an unknown, and all of that adds up to 9. So we could set it up those 2 separate ways. Okay, good luck on homework this evening. Thank you.